Well, so we drove um some friends of mine, and drove down, down to DC that day, expecting, we were expecting to run into Antifa and all this other crap, and but we went there to protest and be heard, but also act as protection for other protesters because of what we had seen the whole year of 2020 with these Antifa riots and BLM riots. There's people need to stand up against those fascists, the true fascists. As much as they want to say they're anti-fascist, they are the true fascists. They stifle free speech, and they want to stifle everybody that doesn't think like them. So
Okay, so but James, when this is not something like you plan months in advance to go to DC. It's like you already had the feelings. In other words, you were a proponent of a rally or a protest in Washington D.C., but you didn't really plan it until a friend of yours suggested it. Say, hey,
no,
you want to go?
yeah, I didn't even know it was going to happen until he told me. He told me about it. Yeah, I didn't even know it was going on. I literally 6 days prior, I got laid off because of weather, and I was putting up in an auditorium in Gates, Shiloh, New York, and yeah, that he I got laid off. It was perfect timing. I was like, yeah, I'll go down before it starts. Before I start working again. And
Okay,
yeah,
thank you, Scott. What motivated you to be there that day?
Well, my story's a little bit like James in the beginning there. I was running at a high rate of speed for quite some time, and pulling my ticket as just an attender to church here and there. Not making the right decisions in life. And I will tell you that I had spoken with a couple of friends about going down on this and that, and I never really came to fruition until I was woken up. And all I can explain to this, and this is part of my testimony, is that I was woken up by God. I was, I drove down there by myself. I drove down there by myself. I got down to the Capitol, and I knew I was supposed to be there. I was there so early that I actually thought I missed a day, or I was a day early.
With
So
enough activity to think it was something was
I'm
happening.
telling you. Listen, I'm telling you, I was right there, and I had posted a video of saying, like, how far are you willing to go to defend your freedoms? And a buddy of mine that I had ridden our Harleys with, he said, "Hey, I'm going to be down there too. Why don't you meet me at the firehouse right next to the Capitol?" And so I did, and I ended up parking my truck in their parking lot behind the fence and all that other jazz, and went up in there and had breakfast with all the firemen, and no politics were discussed, and it was a great breakfast, and that's that. I mean, what drove me to go there? Well, I wanted to go there to protest the lockdowns. That was a big thing with me. Was the lockdowns, the flattening, the flatten the curve and all that bullshit. That should have never happened. And listen.
Well, that affected you. You took a pretty hard impact on that with your gym in New Jersey, right?
Well, let's get it right. It didn't impact me. It impacted the special needs kids that I train, and that was what I couldn't see, and I still can't see any reasoning behind how my autistic children and my special needs kids can't come in and train with me, but that liquor store on the corner is open. And it goes back to following the money trail. And if there was a tax on gyms, I'm sure gyms would be open. Blah blah blah. But that's the only reason the liquor stores were open, was because it's a state tax. It's a tax on liquor. They won't get their money. But
Yeah. And I
It
think
was
Scott,
more,
that is probably another 3 spaces that I'm sure most of us in here share that same
oh,
opinion on. But it's
I'm
just that was an amazing time. But that's what stimulated. That's where your motivation drove from, and then you literally had an epiphany from God that moved you to be there.
without a doubt, without a doubt.
Amen. Amen.
Without a doubt, this was all God's doing. He knew that I needed this time out in my life, and following this, the 11 months in solitary in D.C. before I went to Philly. Well, I was in Hudson County, then D.C., then Philly, then I ended up in Butner, North Carolina, in their medium / high security, with the likes of the Unabomber and the Somalian pirate.
Yeah, yeah, definitely a place where you're gonna remember you're making an impact in your life. Places like that steer a lot of people in very good directions. I see that. Let me get to Thomas and let's get in. I'm gonna walk you guys through. We're gonna get your story, but let me walk you through it. Thomas, what motivated you to be there, and how'd you come to be on the eclipse on January 6th? We still have Thomas.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, it started for me in 2016 when Trump announced his campaign, and I saw the reaction from everybody, which that's when I started wondering, well, why is it that the person that everybody likes now all of a sudden they don't like them? And then we get up to 2020, and I think, like Scott, that was when my eyes really, really opened up, because I was fortunate, being a construction business, for whatever reason, I was fortunate enough to stay open and keep the people that I employed. And I watched friends and neighbors basically die financially, and spiritually. And I didn't agree with it, because the funny thing is in 2020, I went through, or in 2019, I went through what's called a FITS training that OSHA provides, so that you can understand how to protect yourself from hazardous chemicals, fumes, paint spray, dust particles, pathogens, and stuff like that when it comes to the construction industry. And so 2-3 months later, after that course, these people are trying to tell us, that we've got to stay inside and all this, and wear the stupid mask, which was never in the curriculum of the training I had. They never mentioned anything that we were being told to do. And so that was when my eyes really opened. And then fast forward, I went to the Freedom Plaza, the Freedom Rally March in November of 2020, after the election. And that's when I found out about the rally eclipse. On it, we were moved by the hand of God that I was supposed to go and she wasn't. And because we would go everywhere together, like her and I are attached at the hip. And so I went by myself, and that's how I ended up there, as did many other people. I went just like Scott, man. I got on a plane, flew out there, ran into all these people that I've never seen in my entire life. Well, I ran into 2 people that I had seen at the Freedom March, Freedom Plaza, in 2020 on November 14th. I ran into this son and dad. Of all the people there, I run into them. But that's how I ended up there.
It sounds like COVID-19 and the government's reaction to that was a common motivator in there. But I want to go back to you, James. You had mentioned that you'd heard that, or you were sure that there was going to be some Antifa instigators there. So you kind of went down to not only participate in the protest, but to provide some sort of maybe some security to make sure Antifa didn't thrash things up. where were you getting the information that there might be Antifa there? Was that just rumor on the street, or was something that you and your friend had discussed?
Oh, that's what
Where did that knowledge come from?
Well, before we went down, we talked about possibilities of what could happen because we had seen, just watching. Like I had never been to a Trump rally before, but I have seen a lot of other rallies where, like videos from other rallies where Antifa showed up, or any kind of, especially in liberal areas like, DC, which is 97% Democrat, or like if you're looking about places like Portland or Seattle, like I had those to use as examples where these guys love to show up to attack Trump supporters, and they had the whole year prior. And
but you got your information from mainstream media, just in putting your own two
I wouldn't
cents
call it
together.
It definitely wasn't mainstream media, because the mainstream media didn't show that. I got it from independent news sources, streamed videos from people recording Antifa like live,
Yes.
where they're showing them getting outfitted with weapons beforehand through Penske trucks that were funded by outside sources, or they were getting bricks that are
what I meant,
we don't know. We didn't know, so we were ready, and I'm not one to sit back and just not prepare for something like that, so.
No, I've got you, James. My point to asking that was that it wasn't like you had communication with other people that are going to be at the rally. It wasn't like a convergence of all these people that were talking together, and then they converged in one place at one time. Because we all know that the government is actually making that story, that these people all conspired to do this before they got there. They knew what they were going to do when they got there. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying you just drew your own conclusions by the media and the stories that you've seen, like we'd all seen. We've all seen these same things that you're talking about. Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Now, guys, we're right about the half-hour mark, and then I'm going to stick to my format. And this is a brand new show for us, so bear with some of our rough spots. We've already had a couple, but I want to go to James. James is on the East Coast, and James is starting up pretty early in the morning. He's a hard-working construction guy, so I want to go with him, and we're gonna kind of walk through James from the mall or the eclipse until kind of his end of the day. And James, I'm going to kind of prompt you with some questions, just so that we can kind of stay on track. I know there's so much that went on there, and you got so much to say. We've only got so much time tonight, so I want to keep it to this story. I'm more than happy to do it. In fact, I would like to talk to you guys about doing another one about post-arrest, what happened once the law got involved in your lives, and what happened. But today, I want everybody to hear that you guys weren't a conspiracy that converged there in a mastermind to overthrow the government, like some mainstream media puts out. That these are all individual Americans that showed up for their own different reasons. Although it seems like COVID was a stimulator, but what didn't stimulate you together as a group. It's something that you all come to on your own conclusions. So James, you get to the eclipse, and you're on the eclipse, and you're there with a friend, right? So you're not there alone.
Well, I was there with some fun. Yeah.
Okay. And so
I was there with I'm not going to label names, but my had a co-defendant.
You don't have to say any names. You're just saying you weren't a lone ranger there that day. You and your partner were there because you were friends, and y'all rode down together. It was your idea to do it. So it's nothing nefarious, but you were there with someone else.
Yeah.
So you listened to Trump's speech on the eclipse. Were you able to hear it well enough where you were at?
Oh yeah, all the way. We were right underneath the Washington Monument, and there was more people there than you could imagine. It was, there's people estimates of 2 million people there. It was an unbelievable amount. And we're talking people from Vietnam, China, black, white, everybody. It was amazing. Yeah.
So during Trump's speech, did you feel like Trump's speech motivated you to do civil unrest or to attack the Capitol? And that's a story that's been told on the left side of mainstream media for sure. Might even been told on some of the right side mainstream media in general. Did you hear anything out of Trump's speech that fired you up more than patriotically?
No. I definitely, for me, Trump's speech was everything that I expected. Um, it got us, it got everybody like united, but it definitely there was no directive to go and riot at the Capitol building. You know, it was. I would say what happened later on in the day was attributed to outside factors that were there outside of the rally.
Yes, sir. So you hear Trump's speech, and that speech ends. Did y'all plan to go to the Capitol, or did you and your friend, did y'all have any plans that day? Were you just kind of going with the flow?
No, well, no, we had there was talk that it was going to be a march down that there were permits to protest at the Capitol building. People don't understand this, that there was actually protesting permits for us outside the Capitol building that day, for everybody. And so there was an organized to march down to the Capitol building to properly protest outside the Capitol building. And there were permits. It was ready to go. It was legal. It was fine. And we decide as everyone starts marching, you know, we fall in line and we start walking down, and we head up to the Capitol building. We're just, you know, it's just the atmosphere is unbelievable. You know, you've never seen so many people there, and it's like everyone's there for the same reason, you know, to make their voices heard.
How were people going in? Were they running down there, or was it just walking
No,
from one
like
location to just walking and
Yeah, no,
enjoying
it wasn't like,
the company?
I don't know if you've ever been to the Capitol, but if walk from the Washington Monument to the Capitol building is not exactly quite short. You know, it's not something you can, you know, do a battle charge. You know, but no, it was a giant parade of people. People started siphoning down that way, and so we walked with the crowd, and there was people chanting. There's people playing. Some people, I think there's someone who had a drum set they were playing. It was, you know, there's people with speakers, and there were people protesting about abortion. There were people protesting about COVID lockdowns, of course, and you know, it was everything there. And so we end up walking, and we're more towards the front, I would say. We're not the first ones there by any means, but we were like more the middle of the crowd. But if you're gonna we get up to the Capitol building, are coming up on the west side, and we see that there's already a crowd on the west side gathered right underneath the media tower. And so we don't know where we're going. We just like, well, I guess there's a crew there. Let's walk up there. So we walk up, and now we're in the backyard behind the west side, and we're taking pictures with the Capitol building behind us. Like, you know, we're like, this is where I guess where we're supposed to be. You know, we have no idea. There's already a crowd at the west side. You know, so we're looking at it, and I'm looking at it. I can see that it's just like I can see this is a situation where it's like you can see some people pushing at the far right, and then you see nobody push, and you don't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was in my head. I'm thinking, oh well, go up there. You know, we don't know what could happen. You know, so
Well, hang on.
we
When
have
you go up, when you like approach, get closer to the
if
Capitol
we
building,
if
because
we
right now
if
you're on
we,
where you're on grass. Where you
we're
at
on the grass.
with this?
We're on the grass outside the west side, right?
Okay.
And this is right in front of the reflection pool. It's elevated, so the grass is elevated up a tier above the level of the reflection pool that's facing. So behind us is the Capitol building. There's a media tower. There's a tiered the levels of the west side, right? And so we're looking at the Capitol building, and there's four of us, and we're talking, and we decide, you know, my co-defendant and I, we want to go. Well, my co-defendant wants to go up to the front of the west side, where all the people are gathered around the police line, and he wants to be up front. So we had made a rule that you don't leave your buddy. So I go with him, and the other guys go, and they go to a different direction. And so me and my co-defendant, we walk up to the where everyone is, and there's a little small wall that gathers around the edge of this. I guess you would call it I don't know what you'd call the west side. But there's a wall, right? But it's a very low, like a low waist high wall that you can you can scoot over. But there's people standing up on it, and they're waving people up. And so we climb over it and we walk up to the crowd, and there's a lot of people there already starting to form, and people are coming from. We look back, and you see just people stretched all the way down the one road on the right and the left, and it's just all the way back to the Washington Monument. You're like, oh my goodness, look at how many people there are. And so,
but you guys are kind of in front of that. All these people you're looking at, they're all coming to you, right? Or coming in your direction?
Yeah, they're walking towards us. They're walking towards the Capitol building. So we're on the west side where the media tower is now. We're right you're looking at the media tower. We're right to the right of it, but we're to the back of the crowd, and we're seeing, every once the crowd's not pushing, but the people are still getting pepper sprayed and hit with batons, and it's like, and then you see some people. There's individuals in the crowd that are charging and pushing into the cops, and so and the atmosphere was like a crazy. It almost felt like it felt dark to me where I was. Like it felt like oppressive. Like the atmosphere was hard to breathe. Like it was a haze, and.
So it's at this point though. Before it wasn't. It was like we're walking, everybody's patriotic but happy. There's not any malice necessarily. But you're saying the closer you got to the police line, that the tempo and the atmosphere of the crowd changed?
I would say so. I would say there was it was like the whole area. Like you couldn't use your phone. Once we got to the Capitol building, I couldn't make a phone call out. Like they jammed signals. So I couldn't even, I tried video chatting my wife. I tried calling out. Nobody's phones worked while we were at the Capitol building. So you couldn't make any calls out or anything. That was another weird thing, and so we're hearing this one guy with a megaphone. This is all you could hear was this guy at the top of the media tower. There's a lot of people on the media tower. And this one guy, it's all you could hear was this guy screaming, push forward, we need to fight for our rights and all this stuff. Push. That's the only guy you can hear, right? And Cody and I, we're walking through the crowd, and we're seeing what's going on, and we end up seeing they're pass a sign over the top of the crowd, and a big Trump sign, and it's just nothing. It's not nothing going on that's an insurrection. It's protesting, and it gets rowdy, yeah, but it wasn't anything that would. There was nothing. There was no. We're not attacking. We're not attacking cops. We're not doing anything. But then one thing you do notice is when the crowd would die down, the cops would get violent with the crowd. So we moved our way up to the front, and I'm literally right in front of the cops police line, and with Cody, and the police would be quiet. They never said a word, but they would, if the crowd died down, they would pick up their bike racks they had all at once without even saying a word, and jam it into the crowd, and then back up, and then set it back down.
And if the crowd didn't move forward, they'd pick their bike racks up, move forward, and they do it again. And they did this multiple times. I also saw I had an old lady.
Let me ask you a question there. So, but you're standing
Yeah.
at the front. Are they pushing these bicycle racks into you like personally, or how close are you to that action that's happening?
I'm literally right in front of them.
So you're having to step back every time they pick it up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
Gotcha.
And I'm
Okay.
I'm actually directly underneath the media tower. So I'm in a spot where it's kind of a sweet spot that I'm not directly in the crap, like there's people on these, I'm on the steps, but I'm right under the media tower where it's kind of giving me a little bit of distance, from them. It's just because it's in a spot where they can't, like everyone, like people are on the first row of steps up to the first level, and there's only it's only like 10 steps, not even. But
So basically, you're in a good sweet spot because of terrain. You have favorable terrain for that situation.
I can see everything going on, and I see that all the way to the right of there's a lot more people pushing and getting into it with the police. That's on the other side of the crowd, up to the right of me, and they're pushing and shoving. And Cody and I walk up and we walk back, and there was a guy. There's one. I'll never forget this. Cody has his video camera, and a guy walks up to me. And he's walking by, and he's got welts all over his face, and he's bleeding from the nose. He's wearing a T-shirt and shorts in January. And I ask him, "How'd you get that, man?" He says, "You dive into the cops, we'll pull you backwards so they can't get you. And that's how you stop them. Don't worry, we'll pull you out." And I asked the guy, I'm like, "How do you know this?" And he just he clams up, and he walks away. I'm like, wow, this is freaking weird. Like, what the? How does this guy know what he's like? How do you know that? Like, well, we're just gonna jump in. You just jump into the cops, and then they pull you back. Like, and he's covered in bruises. He's covered. His knuckles are busted. His face has got these giant welts on it. He's got long hair and shorts and a T-shirt. Middle of January, and so I'm like, this is weird.
This guy appeared to be somebody that this wasn't his first protest.
No, not at all. Yeah, he was there for other reasons. So there was also we're in the middle of the crowd, and this might be out of time chronological order because it's years, but things I'll never forget is there's a guy that climbs up on the scaffolding to the right, and you see him, he pulls out a pistol, he shoots it in the air 3 times. And this is to the right of the media tower. And I'm like, this guy just shot a gun in it. Like that guy, and I saw that on the news the other day. They actually see this guy.
I saw that.
And they never even arrested this guy. I watched that happen. And so so the guy climbs up, does that, and climbs down and walks away. And so it's like, so I'm like, okay, well, still protesting. Like I'm screaming "fuck communists" and stuff like that, and I'm in front of the cops telling them to join us, and I'm trying to get the cops to join our police line or join our protest. And they're, even with them being assholes, they ended up throwing tear gas grenades into the crowd. We're just standing there. Like, it's crazy because it's like they were trying to get the crowd going. And then the people in the crowd around it's like there were protesters and antagonists mixed together. Like, because some people just didn't seem like they should be there. Like there were people, I know it's hard to talk about that, or to prove that, but we kicked Antifa out of the crowd later on. Like we kicked people out.
Do you think that individual that you encountered that said you dive into the police and they'll pull you back, that's how we do this? Do you think he was part of that Antifa crowd, or was he an instigator?
I 100% believe so. All I know is I was bundled up. It's January 6th. It was cold. And this guy's wearing a T-shirt and shorts in the middle of January 6th.
You know,
if you plan to get sprayed with tear gas, you don't want a lot of clothing on to hold that.
100%. I
get it
don't know what this guy, and the guy didn't have an ounce of Trump gear. This one didn't. He was wearing green shirt and shorts. And they were short, like up to his like mid thigh level, like jean shorts. And he's got long hair and he's covered. And I had one guy. There's one guy I remember. Forget this. One guy comes up to me. This is all when I'm in the first level. I haven't even moved up to the second level. And so I have a guy come up to me and he's wearing an overcoat and he comes up to me and Cody. He's like, "Why are you guys here?" I'm like, "We're protesting the election, and we don't want them to certify these votes. Like, they need to send it back to the state." And he shakes his head and walks away. He's got his hand in his pockets. He was a young guy and like dress clothes and an overcoat. And I'm like, "What the fuck? This guy's weird." Like, he's out of place right now. You know, I think about these things now. I'm like, at the time, you know, you're just going through the motions, but now it's like it sticks out like a sore thumb. And so we're up at the first steps. We're on the top of the 10 steps up, and we're at the top level. And me and Cody are like literally, I would say there's 6 feet between the police line and the first step, and there's a Capitol police officer. This whole time, there's this guy up in the media tower with his megaphone. That's all you can hear. Now, I'll just remind you, that's going the whole time. That's all you can hear is that guy in a megaphone. Now, we're on the top step of the first level of 10 steps up, and I'm 6 feet from the police line. I'm standing there with my arms crossed, and this giant Capitol police officer walks out, and he points at the crowd and he says, "None of you walk past this line." And no one was moving. But he says it to the crowd, and then I'm literally right next to the guy. And he looks over at me, and he didn't even notice me until he looks over at me. And he looks at me. I'm literally on the same step of him. I'm like right next to him. And he immediately turns away from me. And I'm like, I look at Cody, I'm like, "Oh, what?" like this guy, what? I guess we're the exception, you know, like, but I don't know what that, it just seems fishy to me because, I mean, I wasn't wearing a lot. I had a Not Today Liberals t-shirt on under my jacket, but I was wearing my Union hard hat. It had my stickers on it from my union. That's how the FBI found me, was because they were able to link back to my local because my hard hat had my stickers on it. And so it's just.
So, let me make sure we all understand this. So he comes down to the step and he says, basically, "This is my red line. Don't come past this line." You're standing on the same steps. You're essentially on his red line or past it.
I'm past his red line, and he doesn't even tell us to move. You know, and I don't know what. And so the police line pushes back up. Now the police line's 6 steps away. So now the police, he draws his line, right? The crowd hasn't moved past that step. But now the police line pick up their barricades and they move back up to the crowd, right? And now they're right in front. Now they're inches away from the crowd, and they're jammed up into the crowd. And so they went from being 6 feet away to right up into the crowd. And
you're still in your sweet spot, so you're not being encountered by the bicycle fence at this point.
Well, now Cody and I had moved over to talk to some people, and now we are jammed up against the fence because we had moved away from our sweet spot. So now we are jammed. Now we had moved after he had talked. We had walked over to talk to some other people in the crowd, and now we're on the first step or right on the line with, you know, all these people to our back, and now the police are right up in our face. Cody, who's right in front of me, and he's holding his hands up because if you touch the bike rack, they were smacking you with that nightstick. He says, "I'm not pushing, officer. I'm not pushing." He's like, I'm up, I'm not pushing, I can't move. And then, and then the crowd pushes forward and all of a sudden everything breaks and everyone just walks forward. Well, the police immediately run together and they hide in the corner as the crowd just walks forward. And it's like, now it's just, I don't even know. It's just there was a little bit of like jailbreak. I guess everyone just walked forward at that point. And so the police ended up getting walked all the way back to the corner where they ran up, and this everyone starts flooding in from behind, and the running on up the steps. And so at this time, I guess people had been walking around the sides and coming in through the doors, but we didn't know that from where we were.
Let me ask you this. Did at that point, let's say you and your friend said, you know what, this is too hot for me. I'm getting out of here. Could you have left at that point? Did you have a point of egress out of the crowd, or you're stuck?
We were stuck. The one time that we couldn't have left before everyone behind us pushed, because it was just that jam packed up front. But after that, yeah, we totally could have left at that point. And we talked about it. So Cody ends up getting blasted with bear mace in the face pretty bad. And so him and I walk out, we decided to go look for our buddies. And we told them we were going to meet them by the tree in the yard. So we walk all the way back out to the yard.
Let me ask you this though: whose buddies were they? You went there with your friends. Y'all meet some people there and had some camaraderie with some other folks.
I told you other people. I told you my friends.
Oh, my mistake. I misunderstood that.
So I it's not like the feds don't know who they are or anything. So we go out to look for them, and we go out to the yard, and Cody's covered in bear mace because he had gotten blasted, and we don't see them, and we try to call them. Of course, our phones aren't working, so we say like, well, let's check the next level up. And so we head back in. At this point, we walk back up again the steps and everything, and everyone's singing songs around us. Everyone's singing the national anthem, God Bless America. I look up, there's people in the stands on the right and there's people stands on the left. And, it's just so many people. And so Cody and I walk up there's a right banister. We walk up the banister on the right-hand side and we get to the second level. And that's when we look up and we see that there's a doorway with all the people trying to get through the west side doorway, right? That's where they leads to the crypt, I think. And so Cody goes, we're in the back of the crowd, and we're all the way up. We're on the second level. We're in the back of the crowd. And Cody points up front towards the tunnel, and he goes, I want to get up there. And the guy in the back's like, well, we'll send you over the top. And so they hoisted Cody up, and he crowd surfed him to the top. And so I said, I'm with him. And so they hoisted me up, and they crowd surfed me and Cody from the rear of the crowd all the way up to the tunnel. And they showed this in court. And it's kind of, you can see us literally crowd surfing from the back to the front. And so they crowd surf us all the way up, and they crowd surf me up right over everyone's head to the side of the wall, where the side of the door. And I'm holding onto the wall, and I'm on the edge of the wall looking into the door, and I didn't see Cody had dropped down already, and I had crowd surfed over his head by the time, and so he's behind me now. I thought he had literally got crowd surfed into the tunnel. And so I'm like looking in the tunnel now, and it's brutal in there. Like, it's the people in the front are getting
sprayed and beat up, and they can't go backwards. And so they're getting their shit kicked in, and they want to go back. And the guys in the back, of course, are all like push forward, and the people in the front can't. And so it's like a hellhole in there. And so
Now, how close are you to this? You're not quite
I'm
in?
hanging
You're not,
on. I'm hanging onto the door frame, looking into the tunnel. Like this is. So I'm literally like right. I mean, the tunnel is. I don't know how wide the tunnel was. It had to be like 8 foot wide. I don't know, 8 to 9 foot wide, maybe 10. You know, and it might be too big. I don't know. It seemed from now it might have been 10 foot wide. And but the tunnel is a pretty deep, because there's, you know, doors in there, and then there's steps that go up to the crypt. And but I'm like looking in, and I'm watching these people. I mean, like, I'm 215 pounds at the time. I was 230. I crowd surfed from the front banister of the second tier to the doorway. That's how many people were there. I crowd surfed. Like, they carried me on their hands up to the front. And
that's an impressive crowd surf at any standards. Yeah, I am impressed with that.
If anyone ever questions how many people, I mean, I never touched the ground once. So I'm looking in, and
well, let me ask you this: Did your wallet and everything else stay intact as they were crowd surfing you?
Yeah. I mean, it was in my discovery. They showed, the judge commented on our crowd surfing. They talk about it.
It's impressive.
Yeah. Well, and so Cody's behind me. He climbs up on. There's a railing that goes up the stairs to the tunnel, and he climbs up on the railing. He's like holding on people's shoulders. He's looking in, and he takes someone hands him a can of pepper spray, and he blasts it into the crowd. Right, he blasts it into the tunnel, and I didn't see it. It was literally right over my shoulder, but I'm looking in, and he's behind me, and I couldn't even tell where he was, because I was looking. It was like you had tunnel vision. So, no pun intended. So he blasts it inside the tunnel. No one in particular, just shoots it in there, and he falls back into the crowd. And I'm looking in, and I'm watching these people up front getting, you know, beat up and everything. And I watched this kid with long hair. I'll never forget it. He's young, and he's up against the cop shield, and he can't move. He can't even lift his arms up. And this cop reaches over, and with a can of bear mace, and just paints his face from forehead to chin, from like point blank, from forehead to chin, with this orange goo bear mace. And the kid screams, "You're gonna face wash me, bro!" And I'm like, what a fucking dick. And I look left, and this chick looks up at me, and she goes, "Here," and she hands me this tiny little can of pepper spray, and I point to use it, and the can was empty. And so I tried to use it to spray that cop, and it doesn't go off. And so I dropped the can, and another person hands me up another can, and this one's another pink one. This is another woman's self-defense can. Hands me up. I hand that to another guy, and he climbs around from me, and he hangs in the tunnel, and he sprays it, hanging like a monkey, and then he swings back around me, and so I'm stuck at the top here, and I look back, and I finally see Cody. Now Cody's standing behind me on the other side of this railing, and I said, "We need to get out of here, because we can't go in there." And so I jump off the wall, and now I'm stuck in the front of the tunnel, in between two people, and I'm stuck. It, like, there's no moving. and the crowd shoving, and so I'm get pushed, and now I'm right inside the tunnel, right. So if you go through the tunnel, the walls go in. I guess you would say so. I'm hugging the wall basically as the crowd's pushing.
But James, when you say the walls go in, you mean it's like a funnel? It's wide on the outside.
Yeah,
as
wide
you
on the outside, and it goes wide. Like, yes, it's narrower on the outside, and as you go into the tunnel, it widens. Does that make sense?
That does, yes.
So now I'm hugging the wall, and I'm literally right outside the entrance, but I can't move because I got people. I am, as the Army term, nut to butt. So I am squished, and I am keep telling myself that I just need to keep breathing. And anybody that's been in a gas chamber knows that that you can't panic. So I tell myself I can't panic because I'm watching these people next to me literally getting trampled, and they can't get out. And so I'm telling myself I just need to keep my cool, and because if I panic, I'm done. So the guy in front of me just starts sliding down, and his arms are up, and he starts screaming, "Help me, help me, help me." And I took all my strength. I pushed out, and I got under his arms, and I hoisted him up, and I hugged him to the wall, and I said, "Keep your core tight." And I said, "And keep your core tight so you can breathe." And so he says, "Okay." And I'm holding him to the wall with me. And the cops just keep setting off CS gas, CS gas, CS gas. They got these super soaker sized canisters of bear mace, and they're just soaking the crowd. And the people in the front can't get out. They can't get out. The crowd in the back wants to go forward, and the people in the front want to go back, but there's no evac route. So they're stranded, and they're just getting tortured, and the people are panicking, and they're stomping on each other, and they're fighting to breathe because the air is so thick with CS gas. And so I'm holding this guy, and all of a sudden I hear a snap, bang, snap right by my ear. Bang, 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 bang. They started shooting us point blank with rubber bullets. And that's when I finally felt the crowd relax. Finally, I turned around, I grabbed the guy behind me by the chest, and I pushed. And I was right in the door frame. I pushed him back. I grabbed onto the wooden lattice around the door entrance, and I hoisted the tunnel entrance. I hoisted myself back to where I started in the first place. So now I'm here on this molding that's 3 feet above the ground on the wall, looking into the wall. I'm holding onto the wall, onto the molding, covered like in this orange goo. I had lost my sunglasses. I'm
Do you have any effects of the CS gas? Or
I was in
eyes burning?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I couldn't open my eyes. I was covered, and I couldn't see, but I knew exactly I needed to see just for a split second. So I did what I didn't want to do. I took my hand and I used it like a squeegee, and I wiped everything down, and I peeked, and I looked down, and last time I had just jumped down, I got pushed in. I dove into the crowd. The crowd caught me, then lowered me to the ground, and it was like they parted the seas, and I was Cody all the way back at the and he's like, "James, come here." And I walked out, and I said, "Fuck this." And I walked out, and my buddies came, and they had people walking around with water bottles and backpacks, and they grabbed a bunch, and they were dumping them on my face. And I said, "I'm fucking going home." And I walked out. And then we walked down the steps. We made our way through the crowd, and we left DC smelling like cayenne pepper, and being like, on the way back, we're like, that was fucking history, dude. And that was what it was. It was like, I
I tell you what, James. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a break. This is a new
yeah.
format for us, and I want to say some stuff at the top of the hour. Then we'll come back to it. But and we're gonna go back into your story. But I want to give Thomas and Scott a chance to kind of go through their story, and then we're gonna break into audience questions after that, because I think the audience is gonna have some questions for that story. But I do want to ask this before I go on. At what point during this whole thing did it go from being a protest to something that
All
you're
right.
kind of fighting for your life to get out of?
Well, when it turned into something that I didn't plan for, what I wasn't okay with, was when I got stuck in that tunnel. And
So once you got forward on the tunnel and you were kind of stuck in that doorway, things started going downhill about then, because you were no longer
yeah,
there in your choice because you couldn't get
well,
out.
I couldn't. Yeah, exactly. And the thing with, they charged me with, because I pointed that empty can of pepper spray at that cop. They charged me with assault with a deadly weapon, and along with a whole slew of other charges. But yeah, that was our biggest charge, was that deadly weapons charge with the pepper spray. And
You were charged with assault with a deadly weapon with the non-lethal force.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
They
just
said,
making sure.
well,
Just making sure.
according to the prosecutor, that pepper spray could have been spray acid. So that was why they charged me with assault with a deadly weapon.
I got you, brother. That's like I said, that's a whole nother episode or a few episodes
Yeah.
to getting into how the government made some of the charges on, or decided how they charged on this one. But folks, this is our premiere episode or our show for Night Court with Joe Lnu. I want to introduce my guest. My co-host again is Bruce Wayne. He's a tried and true co-host for me. He does a great job, and we got Big Sexy Ron as our second seat co-host tonight. We got FT French. He's a contributor to the show. If anybody's been in the spaces with him, you know he brings a different insight to almost every subject that we have. And then we've got the veteran LT3. He's a co-host. You'll see him from time to time. This is a nightly show. We're going to do it every night from 9 p.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. Eastern. We've got a great lineup this week. We'll get those posted up in the pill for you so that you can set your timers to catch those. We got some VA benefit classing tomorrow on how to expedite your VA benefits. We've got Carbon Mike on Wednesday. He's going to get into us about he's done gun research, which is the result of his case. But that's going to be a two-part show. We're going to have Blue State Red Dad on to tell us what it's like to live red in a blue state. But also, if you'll notice, my rings are blue because I'm the night crew. I do the night show. There's some other folks I want to give some attention. You got Olag. He's got the red ring, and you've got Reno with the red ring. Those folks do the AM show. So there's an AM show for X Talk Live every morning from 9 a.m. Eastern time to 9 p.m. or to 12 p.m. Eastern time. So you get a chance to follow those guys and catch their show in the morning. It's a great morning show. I think you'll like it. Now, I want to get back into it, but I want to go to Scott, and I'm kind of doing this geographically. These two gentlemen are on the East Coast, so the clock is ticking a little closer to their bedtime than it is for Thomas. He's in Mountain Time Zone. So, Scott, do you want to kind of give us a rundown on the days of events like it was for you that day? We've heard what James experienced, but I don't believe that everybody experienced the same thing. Could you kind of start with the eclipse and how you got to the Capitol, Scott?
Well, I mean, James, fine job, brother, and such great detail. It was able to bring me back to that day. And, like James elaborated, that day was, man, it was just a beautiful gathering of fellow patriots and country loving, freedom loving Americans that were there to peacefully protest. Let it be known that we were all there to protest and have our voices heard, but by no means was there any kind of violence that was on my end that I didn't think was going to come into place. I mean,
So
I practice.
that is
I prac-
something, Scott, that you and James had in common, is that it wasn't the intention to go down there and for this to break out. That you're at the rally, everything's good, you're patriotic, but the tempo's good, right?
Absolutely. I mean, listen. I fought professionally for quite some time. I was a Golden Gloves, Diamond Gloves champion in the boxing ring. I had a undefeated career as a boxer before succumbing to injury, and then ultimately, switching it up and fighting professionally in the cage. Um, you know, make no doubt about it. Everybody went down there to have our voices heard that day. At the Trump rally, and I too was a first timer to any Trump rally, really, where he would be present, and that was just it. When Trump said that, oh, we're going to march down there and to the Capitol and have our voices heard and peacefully protest, it had already kicked off. It had already kicked off, and the truth keeps coming out daily, and so much so that the head, the guy, well, the gentleman that was the head of the FBI field office out in Michigan, who oversaw the botched Gretchen Whitmer, Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. He he got promoted or transferred, whatever how you call it, but he actually became the head of the DC field office. What was it? Just weeks before January 6th, he testified under oath that there were so many agents there that were led to be that were instigators, agitators, and motivators, to the likes of which he couldn't even give a number. That were there to incite violence, stoke the flame, so to speak.
And Scott, I'd like to get into that a little further into the second hour. What side of the Capitol did you wind up on? I think James was on the west or southwestish side. What side of the Capitol were you on? The same side as he was, or what location were you around the
I'll tell you.
Capitol?
I'll break it down for you. Here's how it went down. When Trump said that they were going to, we're going to march down there and peacefully protest, I said, "Oh shit, all right, I'll go." So me and the fellows I was with, we started walking down. I think I had a hot dog, maybe a pretzel or something along the way. And when we got to the lawn, the level of the level of violence you could see from a distance it was so it progressed, and it got worse as you looked up and you panned up further to the Capitol. And what got me was I had witnessed officers blindly spraying the crowd and really being the agitators and the whole movement. And I'm not one to stand around, so to speak. And I remember seeing a couple people really get, really getting treated hands on. And I don't sit back. I don't sit back by any means. I don't care if you're the Pope and you're putting your hands on an unarmed woman. I'm gonna intervene and see to it that I end the situation. And when I had seen that, I started making my way into almost like a slight jog, and it sounds so cliche, man, but kind of like Mel Gibson and The Patriot. But I took off on a light jog, which became an all-out dash to get up there and protect my fellow patriots and to see that they weren't going to be abused. And where I was, all I could say was I was on a scaffolding. I made my way to the scaffolding and climbed up high to get a vantage point just to see where it was all coming from. And in doing so, I was shot 30 plus times with non-lethal rounds, pepper balls, of the such. And then, ultimately that
Let,
part of the
let me
capital.
ask you about that, because that's something a lot of people haven't experienced. What kind of effect was that having on you, being shot with the pepper ball? I mean, because getting shot with paintball hurts bad enough. These break open and it's got CS gas in them or powder in them. How was that affecting you when they were popping you with that on the scaffolding?
I'm not trying to sound like a tough guy, but I really don't feel pain. Uh, you know, I remember, as I was getting shot, I kind of made myself a smaller target, to which I watched a woman. She shot me in the kneecap from the catwalk, and I looked up at her, and I'll never forget the eye contact what we had. And I just remember telling her that she had no fucking idea what she was doing. And with that being said, I I was able to gather myself, my wits, and as this had all transpired, as they're throwing flashbangs over the shoulders of their fellow officers. I remember watching these guys as they're throwing the flashbangs. You know what it's like seeing a kid throw with their opposite hand for the first time? That's exactly what it was like. They were so unqualified to be disposing these non-lethal rounds, these percussion grenades as such.
Well, were they getting
into the
were they
crowd.
getting them any distance, or they just weren't accurate in the locations they were trying to throw them?
Some guys, no, there wasn't much distance to them. But the funny thing was, I remember seeing one guy throw one of them, and it landed in almost by the neck of a fellow officer. And I remember not maybe 10 seconds after all that, clown show, that they broke into like a retreat and took off running towards really the front doors, the doors of the Capitol. And I remember running up until left, and with everybody else, and I picked up a case of water. And doing so, I picked up a baton that was with the water. Obviously, that they had me on camera doing. And once we got up to the Capitol, I remember seeing so many people already like there, and it was crazy. I remember two guys being on the scaffolding, and people were already kind of like walking the sills. I don't remember if the other fellows remember or where they were at, but the scaffolding started going up, and I'm talking about window cleaning, like the motorized window cleaning unit. And the two guys that jumped up there, and one was hitting a button, but it's only going up on one side. And then
So hang on,
it evened out.
you're talking about a swing stage, like a horizontal scaffold with cables on each side that drive itself up and down?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Window cleaning.
Interesting.
Like for window cleaning.
Okay.
Yeah. And in doing so, the one side went up, and everybody's like, "Oh shit," and then all of a sudden it leveled out, and the crowd cheered. And then I looked to my left, and I saw that there were all cameras and pictures being taken through the windows. And I was like, "Oh shit!" I'm like, "Here we go." And with that being said, a door had opened on the left, and a couple Capitol officers, all dressed in their Capitol riot gear, I'd come out. There was four of them, and they got locked out. They got locked out, and they were on these stairs like a stoop in Brooklyn. And immediately they started getting, like people are like throwing like water bottles and shit, and it started to become physical. And I come from an honorable law enforcement family, and our fight really wasn't against these four gentlemen, and they corroborated this story, why when they were interviewed. And what happened was they got into it with a couple people that I felt were part of the instigators, the agitators, and motivators that were placed in that crowd. And so I had, when it went to the ground, I had jumped in. And I remember literally being on the ground with one of the Capitol officers when who I believe another gentleman who was in Antifa got a running start, went to kick him in the face, and I blocked it with my forearm, and I picked him up by his vest, got him to his feet, and I said, "You guys are going to get killed if you don't get out of here. Let me help you." And I tried to give them water, and they couldn't take the water because they had on their gas masks, and they collected themselves, and then maybe 2 minutes later, they said, "Can you get us out of here?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I put them in a stack formation, and I brought them along the foundation of the Capitol back to their squadron. And in doing so, I was lit up, red dot special, by their unit. It was all, obviously armed. And I remember hearing the, like their screams through the mask, like, "No, no, no, he's okay, he's okay." And then ultimately them giving them the, the racist okay symbol. And yeah, so then I went back in, I turned
Well,
around.
let's pause there for a second. So these officers were surrounded. They were around belligerents, or what they believe to be belligerents. I guess your definition could be whatever, but they've been knocked down by, and you say by
Yeah.
instigators. And
Yeah.
so you step in, block the kick, and then you help the officers up, and you form a wedge to force back through the crowd so they can be reunited with their unit. Okay, I
Correct.
just want to make sure we had that story down.
Oh no, that's correct. And it's correct. And it was corroborated with, under oath when they were interviewed.
Okay, very good. And so once you
And
get done
then
with that, is that the end of it,
I
or?
go back. I go back to where I was, and I remember just saying that, I remember saying they've lost total control, and then that's when the good old Metro PD came through like stormtroopers and turned up the level of violence. And it was 23 minutes later, and they were marching through the crowd and using their little batons to jab people and spray people. And that's when I walked alongside of them and asked them if they were American, and if they were, they need to act like one. And upon doing so, the last member of that little flank, I was going through the crowd, panned off and circled around me, um, and hit me with his baton in the ribs. To which I spun around quick, pushed the first person that I saw. It happened to be the officer. When that officer hit me with the baton, I pushed him. He went falling back. Another officer came at me, and I put my hands up in a defensive manner, and I said, "Don't fucking touch me." He smacked my hand down, and that's when I punched him in his face shield with their closed fist. And that action right there got me a 40 sentence from our two-tiered justice system.
Man, that's a heck of a story. You're quite the beast, man. I don't know that I could take all that non-lethal and still be wanting to have some more. I might have got it through the first dose, but I think I might have been with James. Let me go find some bottle of water and get this done. I might be done for the day. But impressive.
Yeah. Well, it gets better. I then made my way into the Capitol, and I was approaching the rotunda. When I got to the rotunda, it was full, a full circle up top. I had nothing but photographers waiting, taking pictures, snapping off shots of everybody. And I remember saying, "Nah, maybe this ain't the spot for me right now." And I remember turning around, and they, who I know was an agent, said, "You're going the wrong way. What are you doing?" And I said, well, actually, he said, "No, you're going the wrong fucking way." I said, "No, you are." And he wasn't happy the fact that I turned around. I walked out of the Capitol, and what was wild to me about that, about when I was leaving, was just as much as the transgression, or the progression, and the level of violence, and how it escalated up until the Capitol. The same way, leaving and going back, how it decreased. As I slowly made my walk down the grass, went from violence and blood to, oh my God, to what's going on up there, to people take pictures and thinking it was, Little House on the Prairie. And I just remember saying to myself, like, these people have no idea what's going on up there. Yeah.
Yeah, brother, that's quite a story. What made you finally leave for the day? Is that the point when you, did you have any trouble leaving? If at any point you wanted to leave, were you blocked in by the crowd, like James's story was, or were you able to freely move around?
No. When it was all going down, that wasn't a thought of mine leaving. It wasn't a thought of mine leaving, because I wanted to ensure the safety of my fellow countrymen and countrywomen. It wasn't about leaving, and it was.
Well, I know, brother, and I wasn't insinuating that you were making the choice to. I was just kind of curious as what the crowd concentration was around you. It seems like you were able to move around quite a bit. Or you were able to push your way through a crowd. You got the police officers back to their unit, and most likely saved them some injury, at least, maybe even their lives. But were you ever blocked in? Because James describes a situation where he gets down there and let's go a little further. Let's go a little further. Let's go a little
That
further.
lower west terrace was a bad spot. It was a bad spot.
And that's where James was at, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I was locked up with. I've seen all the body camera footage and evidence from that lower west terrace, and that was a bottleneck. It was a bottleneck. It was a cattle herd, and you couldn't move if you wanted to.
Now it sounded tough, but I'm asking where you were at. Did you have any of those same type of situations, or what was the crowd concentration there?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't as. It wasn't. It wasn't as it wasn't as violent as where he was at. Right where he was at. If you look at the videos, and I've seen them, because when I was locked up in DC, we were able to get our hands on each other's evidence. Unfortunately, I never even saw my evidence, but what we would do was we would pick a person and watch them from each other's evidence, right? And we put together our own timeline where we were able to establish that the men that were standing in the archways that were never told to get down or attacked or whatever, they were literally talking into their scarves, and they were all communicating with one another, and it was clear as day, all in unison, with who was the megaphone man up there on the tower. It was all orchestrated.
And how did you leave that day? Just at the end, you walked out?
Yeah, down that hill, I had to leave. I knew that, especially at that point in my life, that I was bound to really hurt somebody. And I was like, I felt like it got to the point where it was like, you know, this is going to get real bad real quick if I stand around. And I was just a quick. I think it had all to do with just when I turned around and I made that choice not to go further past the rotunda, and that he looked me in the face. I knew it was a setup. I knew it was a setup, and I was too smart to play into their hand.
And that's that's the most harrowing J6 story that I've heard, and I haven't heard all of them, but and I commend you for looking after the safety of others. I need to get to Thomas because
Well,
I want to get this initial story out of the way so we can get to audience questions. I've already got some hands up. I know they're biting at the bit to ask you guys questions. So I want to get to Thomas's story, Scott, and then we're going to come back and then I want to start. I'm sure that
yeah, right on.
some audience questions going to come back and start diving into some of the details and get to the stuff that I know you guys want us to know. I know you do, and I'm kind of hedging my bet on this just so I can get the initial story out because I do want people to see as individuals. I want them to see you as James. I want them to see you as Scott. I want them to see you as Thomas, and that you have family that loves you. You've got lives. You're not just this gray figure that pops up out there that can be the scapegoat for what the left wants to call right-wing extremists. So that's why I'm trying to keep you guys on the story. I want to hear the story of what, because people are thinking and hearing these stories, they're saying, what would I do in these situations? That's why I asked some of the questions I do and try to keep it steered to, because I want folks to see you as individuals. You are J6er's. You're a lot of things. You were a soldier, but you were also an individual when you were a soldier, James. I know I was the same. So let's go to Thomas. Thomas has been very patient. Thomas, are you awake?
Yes, I'm awake. I'm awake.
There you go, my man. Okay, and you and I have been down this path before, and you tell your story excellent. In fact, you were the reason to give me the idea to do this. But let's tell the folks here that may have not heard your story before what got you to the ellipse. We've talked about that. What got you to the ellipse? Let's from the ellipse up to your day, all the way through the tower, and how you managed to get out of there that day. So I'm going to give you kind of just free reign to run with it, and I may ask some questions to just to clarify some things. But you go, brother.
Hey, thank you. It's been great listening to James and Scott. I love hearing these stories. I could hear them over and over again and again. I never get tired of patriotism. I get asked that every now and then. You ever get tired of telling your story? Hell no, I don't. So my day on January 6th started out relatively early. You know, I flew in, got to the eclipse, and heard the speech. I left early. I didn't stay through the whole speech. And like you've heard a few times already, there was a lot of concern having to do with bad players, Antifa, BLM, you know, and the sorts.
Well, let me ask you on that, Thomas. So did you hear that before you went, or is it something you just kind of put together like James did, that they've been doing this? Why wouldn't they do it here? Or what led you to believe that you would encounter instigators from Antifa or from any other organization?
Because my wife and I encountered Antifa at the Freedom March in November of 2020. So I knew that they would be there some way, somehow. I just didn't know that at the time they would be dressed up like all of us. I figured they'd be easy to spot. They'd been easy to spot every other time, you know, that they'd been out. So that's how, you know, I went geared up. I went alone like Scott. I wanted to make sure that I could protect myself and help others. I'm definitely no badass, but you know, I will help somebody in need. And so I tried to be prepared. And that's how I went to DC. So on the day of January 6th, during the speech, I decided, with the amount of people and the fact that I was by myself, I decided that I was going to get a head start from the crowd and head to the Capitol. So I walked by myself from the monument basically to the reflecting pool, and I just casually carried on, and I'd run into some people that were walking in the opposite direction, and I would greet them and say hi, and something patriotic. God bless America. God bless you. On my way, and there wasn't a lot going on while I was walking because the crowd hadn't made the move yet. But there was there's a couple things that resonate in my mind, and one of those was at the time, as I was walking, I noticed off to my right where I could see, every now and then you can see down a city street block in DC on your walk to the Capitol. And there's some like little areas for seating and stuff, like little pretty like parks, little tiny parks, I guess is what I would call them. And you would see the side streets, and I noticed on this one side street that there was a bus of people getting out, and I was like, well, they're a little bit late for the event, because they were all dressed as if they were supporting President Trump. Later finding out that those were probably a handful of the bad actors that they dropped off in that town. So that was really the only interesting thing I saw on the walk over there. And as I approached the back of the Capitol at the end of the reflecting pool, I was coming up. If you're walking towards the Capitol, I was to the right. And as I walked up, I ran into a group of patriots who were listening to the speech on some two-way handhelds. I guess they had some people that were at the speech, and they decided that they wanted to be at the Capitol, and so I listened to some of it by hanging out with them and talking and just having a good time. And like you've heard from all these guys, the energy and the attitude was amazing. There was so Capitol Police line that was on the Capitol grounds at that point before anybody had gotten up to the Capitol. And my father, rest in peace, he's no longer with us. He was a police officer in Fullerton, California, and he was part of the riots in the 70s, and so he understands what it looks like for riot control. And in our conversations that day did not look like anything for riot control. These guys spaced out on the back of the lawn at the Capitol. They were 20 to 30 feet apart. Only way to communicate were on their radios. They would come up to the crowd and tell them, hey, your kid can't be on the wall, the little 3-foot wall that's that meets up with the green belt. And people were just kind of, I questioned it, and I took the opportunity once that happened. I jumped up on the wall and asked them, well, what are you going to do about me? You're going to tell me I got to get down, because I'm going to tell you to your face that you got to shut up and get out of here. This is our house. We paid for this, and we can stand on it. We can sit on it. We can spit on it if we want. I mean, that's what freedom. That's what being an American is you have the right to be either an appreciative patriot, or you can be dirtbag derelict. I mean, that's what this country allows people to do. So anyways, with that taking place, the crowd's starting to fill in finally, because the speech had ended. And I'm standing up on that wall, kind of surveying the crowd and surveying the grass going up to the Capitol. And off to my left, as I'm looking at the Capitol, I see a flag come out from nowhere. Looks like it came out of the ground. And apparently there's a tunnel that goes underneath the grass, and is a sidewalk that goes to the back of the Capitol. And I saw people go to the Capitol, so I immediately turned around and yelled at everybody, "Come on, let's go. We're taking the Capitol." Those were my words. And I started grabbing people by the hands, women, children, older and younger men, and helping them up. And we started our approach to the Capitol. I went into a jog. There were people running past me. They weren't running in a battle run. They were running happy, excited. What's next? What are we going to do now? That's the take I got. Even when I said we're taking the Capitol, it wasn't that we're going to overthrow the government. It was just, we're going to go protest at the Capitol. And so I started on my way, and there was a few hundred people with me at that time, because the crowd hadn't filled in. And I was up on the concrete, and we were jumping up and down like we'd scored a touchdown, me and this other guy. And out of nowhere, I noticed red splatter hit the concrete, and there was a report, which, being around guns and hunting, growing up in Montana, I knew what a report sounded like, and it registered that was a gunshot of some sort. And then the guy that I was jumping up and down with, he hit the ground. So I had these two things happen. Neither was connected, but as I saw the guy hit the ground, because that caught my attention, I went to help him, because he was like shaking a little bit. And my mind went, "Oh my God, this guy's having a medical situation. I'm gonna try and help him up and do what I can." And when I grabbed him, I didn't have my gloves on to protect my hands yet, and the electricity from the taser that he'd just been shot with transferred through to my body, and I got a jolt that I wasn't expecting, and I dropped, and I looked at him kind of funny, because I didn't understand what had just happened. And then I saw the taser barbs lodged in his chest and upper body area, and I followed him back to the police officer, or Capitol Police, whatever he was. And the look on the fella's face was fear, and he was squeezing that trigger, on that taser like it was going to save his life, or maybe he thought he was going to end that guy's life. I don't know what it was, but he was white knuckling that taser for dear life. And as I'm looking at him, there's another officer that comes what would be off of his left shoulder from behind him, and he's got his taser drawn as well. And mind you, we've got hundreds of people are starting to fill in at this point. And this
Let me ask you at this point, Thomas, if you wanted to leave at this point, could you, or were you?
Well, yeah, and that's
squeezed?
Funny that you asked that, because that's exactly where I was headed with this next two statements. The gentleman with the taser, he's got it pointed at me. And I'm like, there's no way he's going to shoot me with that thing. And sure as shit, he shoots me. He looks me up and down, because you could tell that I had some sort of something on that would stop the barbs from penetrating my upper torso. So he decided to shoot me in my leg area. And if you're ever at a protest, everybody listening, double jeaned Carhartt work pants. It will stop the barbs at a 10 to 15 foot distance from penetrating your skin, just to let you know. So he hits me. I hear the pop. I look down, and sure enough, they're in my pants. And I look back up at the guy, and I just shake my head. And I was like, you're an idiot. So I grabbed the wires and I pulled them out of the barbs. The barbs stayed in my jeans, and I threw the wires back in his direction. And it was right then that voice, probably my wife, hey, danger, get away, go to safety. And as I turned I was going to go away from the danger right then, because that's my wife in my head. That wasn't happening. At that point, the amount of people, and that's probably where the fear in this guy's eyes was from, is the amount of people that were starting to fill in to that area it was like an overflow. It was like somebody had unleashed the floodgates, and it was just waves and waves of people. I wouldn't have been able to go back through the crowd because there were too many people coming forward to me. So the best thing for me to do was one of two things. I could stay there, where I risk some type of altercation or injury with these officers who had no reason to be doing what they were doing at that point in time, other than instigating a situation. So I could stand there and risk that, or I could move with the crowd. So I chose to move with the crowd, because there's usually safety in numbers. And I gradually worked my way up to the concrete steps, and I was like James' story, I was to the right of the media tower the whole time that I was back there. And I watched a number of different things happen with people, including myself, that just didn't make any sense. I'd see the police with those barricades. Like James said, I was part of the front lines of the crowd where they were pushing those barricades into us. And a lot of times they'd push you in a fashion that if you're on the stairs, you have to grab the barricade in order to keep your balance. And that would just lead to a tug of war, where now you're pissed and you want to take that away from them and get rid of it, is what typically happened. And then they'd go and grab some more, and slowly but surely the crowd fills in, the police fill in. The violence on the police side was exactly as you heard described from James. As the crowd would calm down, they would advance in a fashion that would, reignite the frustrations or whatever, within all of us. I never saw anybody like try and attack the police, but I did see people defend themselves when attacked by the police, including myself. And you see this going on, and it's not, like Scott said, you see it happening to a woman, and you're just, you want to go, and you want to be to defend that person. Old people you see getting sprayed in the face with these guns, that are launching streams of mace. You've got people yelling, and the megaphone guy, hold the line, push forward, hold the line. You got people in the crowd running through and doing the same thing. I don't know if James knew this, but Ray Epps was right there in that same area for 30 minutes or more where we were, and he would go up and he would talk with the police, and then he'd go fish through the crowd and incite people to stand up and move forward and get back up there because they got gear. He literally pushed me with his hands at the small of my back and yelled at me, "You're geared up, back to the front of the line, hold the line." And so you've got all this chaos going on from people that are in the crowd, from the police that are on the line, and the confusion and assaults that are going on. It's a wonder that more things didn't happen that day. The 4 people that passed on January 6th is a travesty in itself, and I pray for those families all the time. But I don't think a lot of people realize just what happened that day and how much of it lies at the feet of the Capitol Police, the DC police who, when they showed up, it got worse. It was 10 times as bad as when it was before, because now these guys, they're there and they have all the protective gear on when they show up. Like they are completely stormtroopered out, and so they're going balls to the walls because they know that they have full protection on. The Capitol Police were doing their thing, but you could see in the videos and whatnot, they just got jackets, they've got their belts. None of them are wearing any protective gear, but they're still inciting the crowd. And when DC Metro shows up and they're stormtroopered out, it takes a whole nother level of assault. And if anybody's going to say that anything happened that day as far as a riot, that would be one of the first times in American history where the police were responsible for the rioting, not us. We were reacting. A lot of people were leaving. Others may have been fighting back. But when you're in a self-defense situation or that fight and flight mode, you choose one of 2 evils. You can either run or you can stand your ground. And a lot of us, we were going to stand our ground because this is our country. This is our house. This is not yours. We paid for this and we pay for you. And at that point, that day, as far as I'm concerned, I think everyone would agree with me. We fired the government that day on January 6th. And it's just starting to catch up with all the people that are waking up to understand that we have fired them. And we are going to take back this country one day at a time. So moving more into what happened as DC Metro pulls in, the assaults get a little bit more nastier. The artillery, whether it was rubber bullets, the CS gas, the flashbang grenades, the batons, the barricades, you name it, we were unarmed. We didn't have anything except some flagpoles that were mostly plastic, maybe a few wood ones. Our backpacks, stuff.
Let me ask you this, Thomas.
Go ahead.
You'd already had your altercation with law enforcement on the mezzanine, for lack of a better word for it.
Yes.
And the taser was ineffective, but you were hit with pepper spray at that time as well, right?
Oh yeah, I was sprayed directly in the face.
What are the effects of the pepper spray at this point on you?
It burns and takes your breath away. Like, you literally don't want to breathe. If it hits you in the eyes, you cannot see. It takes a crap ton of water and patience to get it to where you can get your vision back. You constantly have this burning sensation on your skin from it. You can't get away from the pepper spray once it gets on your clothing, so you're just stuck with it.
And I know this from experience. That's absolutely true. That's the reason I've asked all three of you that same exact question. What now with this pepper spray? And you're right, it's on you, it's burning. You can wipe it. It's still going to burn. Snot's coming from your nostrils to your ankles. It's not pleasant, and it wasn't meant to be pleasant. But how is this affecting your kind of your decision process? I mean, it's affecting. You're not able to move as well because you really can't see. You're seeing through squints. You're seeing through tears. You're struggling breathing, and you're right. It's in your clothes. So every time you breathe in, you're getting some more of it. How's that affecting the like this decision process of where you go next and what you do next, or did it have any effect in it?
I wasn't moving away from the situation because at that point I needed assistance and I needed to give assistance because that's the state of mind you get put in. It almost seems that it's a purposeful act because it sterilizes the crowd. You could become disoriented, so you stand in place, you stay in place, which allows them to get ready for their next assault. And that's really what I feel that this was meant to do was you instigate, you disorient, and then you instigate again, and you keep doing that over and over, and pretty soon, you're going to get the reaction you want, which is the crowd pushing forward and getting more and more upset because they're having to defend themselves. They're still not attacking the police. That's the one thing that people don't realize is you may see the clips, and it's the same damn clips over and over of somebody doing something, but they never show, like with Scott, they never show what happened that led up to that reaction. Nobody was there to assault or destroy or hurt any law enforcement, anybody in the Capitol. We may say there's a lot of things we'd like to see done to them, but we didn't go there to hurt those people. Look, there were enough of us there that day that if that's what we had planned, that's what would have happened. But that's not what we were doing. When you become, disoriented and confused and you're being, attacked and the whole crowd gets sterilized where nobody knows what to do, nobody can move, and you still got thousands of people who don't know what's going on 50 to 100 yards in front of them, and they're still trying to get to the action. You're stuck. You're literally stuck. You can't get out of that situation unless you get crowd surfed somewhere. You create a stacked line and you move through the crowd. There's things you can do, but that's not something that comes to mind right away. So you deal with it. You try and help the other people that you see struggling. There were many times that I said to the police, because I was on the front line, what the hell are you guys doing? This is not what Americans do to Americans. You guys will be judged in history. Maybe not by us, but you will be judged in history for the acts you're committing.
Thomas, you say something that is absolutely true. What the media has shown, the video clips that have come out of January 6th are the same ones that are regurgitated. There are almost no context to them. There has been some release since then. I think I say rather recently in the last 6 or 7 months. You guys know better than I do. That does give a better picture. And I'll be honest with you, the picture that you guys have painted for us here tonight is more accurate from what I've seen on the video, with the exception of maybe a few hot spots. But that's why I think you telling your personal story and James and Scott telling your personal stories, I think is so important, because nobody's really telling that part of it. They're telling we got the legal side, we've got the police tactics side, we've got the conspiracy side. You got all these different aspects and facets to the story. And I'm not saying one has more merit than the other. I'm saying that there are a lot of different angles to look at January 6th. But that's why I want you to tell, like, personal offense of that day, that, your pepper spray. That's why I've asked all of you guys what the effects of that pepper spray were. And it's not zero. Depending of, you may fight through it. So you may affect some more than others, but I promise you the effect is not zero. And I think that has something to do with what you decide to do in the moment, because it does start to take some of your faculties away if you have a severe reaction to it. But take us through the rest of the day, Thomas. And I want to wrap up your story here pretty quick so we can get on to some questions. And I've got some we've got some great folks in this room, and I want to give some shout outs here in just a few minutes, just to acknowledge their presence and their appreciation for participating in our space. So go ahead and take it to the finish there, Thomas.
Yeah. So, DC Metro shows up. We've got CS gas in the crowd. We've got flashbang grenades going off in the crowd. All of that stuff is disorienting. You heard James mention earlier about a Trump sign coming across the crowd. Well, that was the sign that got me my conviction. I touched that sign as it went to the police line, and that is considered an assault on top of just being there being a civil disorder. But as after that happened, it wasn't but maybe a half hour to 45 minutes later, something odd happened, and that was the police line broke. They just spontaneously, without a word being said, they all trotted off, which would have been to my right, their left, and they went underneath the scaffolding and up the stairs, and they were out of sight. And all of a sudden, there was no more police on the same level with us. And that's when the crowd really moved forward. And I just kind of stayed in my position, which was, probably about 10 or 15 yards to the right of the media tower. And I just let everybody fill in. Because again, it was either go with the crowd or stand still and let them, walk around you. And as I was standing there, I noticed that people were starting to fill the scaffolds that were to the right and the left of the Capitol building. And I decided that I was going to use the momentum of the crowd to try and fish my way over so that I could get a higher point of sight to kind of just see what was going on, maybe what was coming on next, where maybe get a sight as to, where the police were setting up now, was there something else coming? Was that a safer place? So on and so forth. So I ended up going and climbing up the scaffold and was up there. And by the time it was all said and done, there was, I don't know, I was at some points I was like, is this actually going to hold all of us? There were so many people on it. And I stayed up there for the remainder of my visit, just because the amount of people was, I mean, I've never seen anything like this from the view that I had. You could not see any grass, concrete, anything. You couldn't see anything. There was so many patriots converging on the Capitol and just packing in like sardines. And when the police left, the crowd erupted in joy. They didn't erupt in a way where it was like, all right, now we got this. Now we're going to get them. No, it was USA, USA. This is our house, singing the national anthem, like a whole different energy erupted. And then the energy changed again as word traveled through the crowd of what happened to somebody inside the Capitol, which was Ashley Babbitt had been injured. We didn't know that it was a fatal injury at the time. You could see the assault going on at the tunnel, which you heard James describing earlier. I could only get a vantage point from up above, but to see, what was going on up there and to hear the cries for help and the chaos that was going on right there, one could only imagine what was going on up further inside of that tunnel where you couldn't see and you couldn't hear what was going on with those people. But
was this the same? Let me ask you this, Thomas. Was this the same tunnel that James was in?
Yes. It's the tunnel where you see the guy stand up holding the crutch, and he holds it up in a defensive, like a self-defense stance. He was actually praying for the police is what he was doing when he was holding that crutch. But yeah, that was where Roseanne Boyland took her last breath. That was where James, caught his charge. That was where a lot of people faced the wrath of the police in a tight in a tight space with no defense, no you got to remember, these guys are all geared up. They look like stormtroopers. And so they have all the equipment to inflict major injury to anybody in front of them. And that's what they were doing. You know,
And James described it, I think, that very well. Is it was a violent situation in the tight quarters of the tunnel. But I want to go back to Ashley Babbitt. There wasn't cell phones weren't working. Not everybody's running around with walkie-talkies, I would imagine. How was that word passed to you? Was just like in passing, hey, did you hear what happened in the Capitol?
It was, you've ever seen a wave happen in the stadium? It starts with a couple people and then pretty soon the whole stadium's doing it. That's how the information came out. A couple people passed the information. It circulated down the stairs from where it happened through the rotunda and then out the doors. And the next thing you know, the whole crowd knew about it. And you could literally hear the gasp in the crowd. It circulated so fast. You could literally feel the energy and hear the gasp of the crowd when that news came down. It was
so we're literally talking about the world's largest game of telephone. They were actually passing the message was being passed from one person to the next. No emails, no cell phones or text messages. That's wild.
And it was the first time in history that it started out with tomato and ended with tomato. It was.
Man, I was with you until then. I played the telephone game in some classes. I don't think that's possible, but I'll agree to disagree. It seems like it always gets mixed up.
This is the one time where it came out that that somebody had been shot, and we didn't know who it was right then. The name hadn't come out. It was just the incident had been circulated, and you could feel the concern in the crowd, and I think a lot of people were wondering, you know, is this what they've resorted to? Is this what's coming down the line next? But it still didn't take away from the fact that the people were there to make their voices heard. They didn't get violent with that news. They didn't start destroying things with that news. Prayer went up into the air. That's what happened when that news came out, is people prayed. And people were very concerned. I myself my jaw hit the floor when I heard the information, when they're like, did you hear that somebody just got shot in the Capitol? You know, that's how that kept going through. You could hear it next to you. People just it was just flooding through the crowd.
Just everybody receiving the information and passing the word.
Yep.
That shows quite a bit of unity in the crowd, and it's evidence to what you guys had spoke of earlier, kind of a sense of camaraderie with each other, not a violent attitude, I wouldn't think. But where are you at this point? Are you still on the ground, or have you made it?
I'm up on the scaffold, the second row from the top, so I can see everywhere on the backside of the Capitol, and the crowd was immense. There was cheering, praising, singing. Even though all this was going on at the front of the tunnel, there was still big pockets of people that were, you know, they were chanting and cheering, and they just had they were promoting nothing but good energy. You know, this is how carefree the people were. I had a guy ask me, he's like, "Here, can you hold my phone? I got to go look for somebody." I'm like, okay, sure. 45 minutes passed, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, well, pretty soon I'm gonna leave, and I don't even know who this dude is or how to get him his phone back. And out of nowhere, he comes back. He's like, "Hey, man," and I was like, "Hey, you want your phone?" I mean, talk about trust. This guy trusted me to hold his phone. He'd never seen me in his whole entire life. I don't even know what his name was. He didn't even know mine. But that's the type of people that were there, are people that trust one another. You know, we were there because we can't trust the government, but we can trust each other. So the day wraps up. The sun's starting to go down. I've seen quite a lot of things that I never thought that I'd see happen, especially at our state capitol. And I slowly but surely climbed down the scaffold, and I make my, it's pretty much dark at this point, and I make my way down. I run into a couple of fellas who are carrying this individual who apparently fell off the media tower and landed on the ground and was injured pretty severely. I don't know if it was a critical thing, but they thought that he might have broken his back, and they were trying to get him to where he would be closest to the road so that he could get, medical attention. And my assist in that was running to, I saw a police car down at the end of the reflection pool where the first cross street is after you do the roundabout there. And I ran as fast as I could to get to that police car to ask for medical assistance. And, the damnedest of things happened. As soon as I reached that car, the guy's window was down about an inch. And as I started to ask him for help, he rolled up the window, put it in drive, and just drove away. And I was like, wow, that was insane. So I turned around and ran back to where I had last seen the people just to see if I could help in any way. And at that point, somebody had gone to the other side and spoken with a police officer who did give a shit, and medical attention was on its way. So I then turned and walked back the way I just ran up from to try and flag down that police officer, and headed back to where I forget what street it is, but there's a couple hotels on it where a lot of patriots were staying. And I called for an Uber driver and got a ride back to my place just outside of DC. Apologized to the guy for the fact that he's going to have to clean his car even more than he expected earlier that night, since I was riding in it full of pepper spray. And I headed home, not thinking one iota what was going to come next.
Thank you, Thomas. And I will point that out. The reason I wanted to know how everyone left. If I commit a crime, I leave one way. If I don't think I committed a crime, I leave another way. They didn't escape, evade. They went home. And you're right. That poor Uber driver, he had some cleaning to do. That pepper spray is a persistent. James will know what I'm talking about. That we don't like persistence when they're hit us. They have a tendency to hang around. Well, guys, we're running a little bit over on time. I want to acknowledge some good guests that we have in here. Some supporters of Be Quite Honest with Joe Lnu in my little show I've got here. Shelly's always great. If you're not following Shelly, you're missing out. She has some remarkable spaces, and she will give you some remarkable news. I listen to her before I would listen to mainstream media, because usually she's ahead of them. Not saying anything, but she's a good follow. Moni's her co-host, also a great follow. Please give her a follow as well. We've got Spun. Spun is a new follow for me, but I'm enjoying what I'm seeing there. I recommend her as well. We've got what else we've got in here? We got, and of course, our X Talk Live show guys, the guys with the red rings. Give them guys a follow, or follow the Joe Lnu show, and we'll keep you on in invitations for their daily show. That's the AM show from 9 to 12, starting at AM. It is a great show. I'm going to pitch it over to my co-host, Bruce. Bruce Wayne has got some other shout outs to do, and we want to give some special folks that are in our audience an opportunity to speak if they'd like to. Go ahead, Bruce.
Hey, thanks, Joe. So I noticed we have a couple J6 moms in here. I think we may have lost the account name J6 Mom, but Mama Mel, really appreciate you being in here, sticking with us for so long. And I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to speak if you'd like to grab a mic. Try to keep it short. Then we're going to get back to questions, open it up to the general audience, but we wanted to give the moms of J6 an opportunity first. And if there are any other J6 moms, I was looking at profiles and couldn't really tell, but if there's any others that would like to speak who are moms of J6, send us a request. We'll let you speak. But Mama Mel, if you'd do us the honor of giving us a few words, we'd love to have you. And I'll land there.
While we let Mama Mel make a decision if she wants to speak or not. When I tell you about these guys, they're people like us, because we have a tendency to look at people in the news as they're not people like us, but they are. They have mothers and fathers. They have children. They have wives. They have husbands. Each one of them are going through this quagmire of the heavy boot of the government on their necks. It not only stands on the defendant, if we say in this case, it just doesn't stand on that one. It stands on all the family, anyone that loves them. If they're the breadwinner, there's no money coming in. You'll see some donation sites that we put in the pill. Take that for what it's worth. But if you feel it moves you, $5 or $10 will make a big difference in some of these guys' lives. Some of these guys have lost everything, and they're working. You heard Scott; he's working 3 jobs. He owned some gyms in New Jersey, and I believe I saw him or some cohorts of his that did some pretty serious protesting against New Jersey on keeping the gym open during COVID, when we all felt just a fraction of what the heavy weight of the government is on us. So. These families in that donation, you guys, they're there for you. Post them, repost them, try to get the word out. Anything that goes to these guys does absolutely help. And I did notice that Thomas, you remember his wife was the rock in the family while he was going through this. She held his business down and kept his livelihood open. But I did notice that he put up a gentleman that does need some help in there. So my hat's off to you, Thomas. When I asked you for donation sites, you found somebody that needed a donation site and you posted it. You're a gentleman. Let's go to Mama Mel. How you doing, Mama Mel?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for having me as a speaker. That's very kind of you to consider us and our family. We really appreciate it. Matter of fact, we're all a family. We're America First patriots. My son is, I could say his name, but he prefers that I don't just throw his name out there on recorded spaces all the time. Not that you couldn't figure it out, but my son is not in prison anymore. He did his time, as they say. Unfortunately, he wasn't. He did take a plea deal because he's scared. He's got 5 kids. He just walked in the Capitol, walked out, and he was in there all of 10 minutes. It's really a sad situation for us. We've done a lot of spaces. We've tried to do so much to help other families. You can only as a mom take so much, though. A lot of the times the spaces got out of hand, and it hurt my heart. It broke my heart. As much as you try to do the right thing, it just stinks, right? Listening to these guys tonight, it just brings back all the heartache, and it's hard. Thomas, James, all you guys, Scott, I bless your hearts. I know there's so many wives. It's not just the moms, but as a mom of a J6er, it was torment. It still is torment. My son's doing fantastic, but he has a lot of goals later. Right now, he has a gag order, so he can't speak until after his probation. So I am his voice, so these guys that get to say things, it makes me happy to hear that they can speak, because when mine gets to speak, he's going to say a lot. I can tell you he's going to shout it from the rooftops. We're in this together. We are one big family. I want to say, I hope like 75% of the country, I want to hope it's more than that, but I'm going to say 75% of the country, or at least the 75% of the people that were there. I really hope to God that they stand up, because there were a lot of people there that day. We all know that. I just want everybody to speak out. I live in a homeowners association, and they don't like the fact that I have signs in my window of my home that say, release the J6ers, our hostages, and they don't like it, but that's too bad, because they're in my window, and I'm real proud, because my baby is a January 6th hostage still to this day, and probably always will be until we pray that Trump gets in, and hopefully that he will release the hostages, all of them, the ones that are out and the ones that are in. It is a sad thing in this country to see what we're going through. But I love you all. God bless you. God bless our country. Pray every day. We have to stick together. Stand up. Speak about it. Just on the outside at the grocery store, we have to do everything we can. I'm very blessed, and I feel like that we were all put in this situation for a reason. Each and every person that is related to a J6 situation, whether you're an advocate, you're a friend, whether you're on the good side of this, whether you're an American, we are all J6ers, because if they come after us, they're going to come after everybody. It's not just the J6ers. You see these in videos everywhere. I just want to thank you again for having me, and I would love to come back on, and I will I appreciate Shelly for asking me to come to your space tonight. I know I'm all over the place. I just want to talk about everything, and I can't get it all out in one time, and there's so much more to this, we all know.
Well,
Thank you
Mama
so
Mel,
much, Joe. Yes, honey.
I'm interested in doing a show for J6er families, just to tell. I think the story needs to be told, and not the narrative that's being pushed over media, which seems to be taglines. But I think we need, as Americans, need to look at other Americans that are facing the government. We need to look at them as individuals, in my opinion. But I would be interested in doing the show with you. Shoot me a DM and we'll talk about it. Now, I want to give the mic to Shelly. Shelly is a super advocate for J6ers. I've been in plenty of her spaces. She's kind of inspired me to do some of the things that I'm doing. So I want to give Shelly a minute or two on the mic to address the J6 folks, our guests. I don't want to say J6, and address our guests tonight. Go ahead, Shelly, if you will. I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much, you guys, for having this space, especially tonight, because my heart is so heavy with all of the with all, I don't want to say the word drama, okay? But listen, the most important thing that we need to do right now is I am so glad that Thomas and James and Scott are here and they're speaking tonight, because these are the voices that we need to be hearing. I don't know how many times people tell me, why are you still talking about this, when I go into other spaces? This was 3 years ago. We shouldn't be talking about this anymore. But what people don't realize, even, even outside of Twitter, it is so important that all of us be talking about this too. And you're going to hear me say this every day in my morning space with Moni. And Moni, she's a whole nother, she's an extension of me, and I'm an extension of her. And she is the one that is my partner in this advocacy for what is right for America and the J6ers. And that is being sure that we're talking about it with members of the public and our family and our friends and our neighbors and the people that we work with and the vet and people in line at the grocery store. When you go to get your oil changed, because you know what? I know firsthand that people don't have the time to get on to Twitter and listen. They're not reporting about J6 on the news anymore. And I can tell you that people have no idea that there's close to over 1,400 people that have been arrested now, and that the arrests are continuing every single day. And the pace has picked up because the DOD, the DOJ, the Attorney General's office, they are so freaked out by President Trump and his campaign and the momentum that it has gained, and the people, the polls, they are trying to get as many arrested as they can before November so that they can use it against him. So I have to commend these gentlemen for getting up and speaking, because their voices and their stories of that day are so important. And I can tell you, Joe, that yes, it started at Tomato and it ended at Tomato. Now, today was a really important day. It was April 8th. Tom Fenton was in San Diego. The DOJ is trying to get the Ashley Babbitt case moved to DC. Why? Because nobody there gets a fair trial. You have the victims of that day, supposedly, the residents and the people that worked in DC, as your jury. They're being fed catered meals all day long, and the trials are conveniently stacked one right after another. They start on Thursday, Monday, they end on Thursday. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Well, this is why we have to keep speaking and we have to keep educating people, and why we need to unite and do whatever we can to get rid of the ugliness and the dark cloud that surrounds the J6 community, because it doesn't help us. It only hampers us. And Angie really wanted to listen. She really wanted to be here, but her son Mason is in prison right now, and hearing the stories was really difficult for her because of the grief that she's going through for her son right now. And I have to give a shout out to Rise Above, because her son is in prison now, and she thought he was going to be in Oregon, and she moved there to be close to him, and he's actually in California. But all of these people need everybody's support. And the last thing that I'll say, because I know that you're running over, is you guys, if you hear somebody in here speaking and you like what they're hearing, please be sure to follow them. I'm going to do a little spunky here. It's not going to be as good as her, but please follow your host and your co-hosts. Please retweet the space. We have to support our J6 communities. We also have to support American Patriot Relief Foundation. They are the most transparent and the only legitimate nonprofit 501c4 that's helping with commissary, and it's helping with the J6 families. They are so very important. They spend $3,000 to $5,000 a month making sure that every incarcerated political prisoner has money in their commissary, and it's all spread out equally. And they do not, American Patriot Relief and their founders, who are actually on house arrest right now waiting sentencing, Mark and Jaleese Middleton, good friends of mine, they don't take a dime from the foundation that they've created. So very important foundation, nonprofit. The other one, of course, is Condemned USA and Stop Hate. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight and speaking with Joe and his wonderful co-hosts. I know you guys may not have heard my voice before, but you know what? We advocate for you gentlemen every single day. We love you guys, and we are here if you guys ever need anything. So be sure to follow me. And if you know of others, please let them know that we're here. With that, I am going to yield back to you guys. And thank you again for having this amazing space.
Well, Shelley, as always, we appreciate you, and Thomas and Scott. James had to go. He had getting too late for him. And rightfully so. He probably stayed longer than I would have. I know what time he's got to get up in the morning, and he's doing a tough job. But if you don't know, Shelley is a huge advocate for you guys. In fact, I probably learned most of what I know about J6 from her personally and in her spaces, just listening to the stories that she brings forward. So Shelley is an excellent follow for any guys, especially if you're a J6 supporter or a J6er in themselves. And I catch myself saying it again. I don't want to refer to you as J6ers. You're my fellow Americans. You're my brothers and sisters, and I don't like that idea of putting you in a group.
Hey,
But,
Joe.
Yes,
Joe,
ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to let you know that Angel Harrelson, Cajun Queen, Kenny Harrelson's wife, it said that she's going to join the space and hopefully grab a speaker after she gets off the phone with Kenny. So she's a really good friend of all of ours. She's amazing. So like I wanted to let you guys know that. And I also wanted to let you know that Mama Mel and Angie and I are in the works, and hopefully we'll get Rise Above. But we are working on possibly starting up a new J6 mom space. So when we do that, we will let them know we really, really need to do a space for the J6 moms so that they have a place where they can speak, they could talk about what's going on with their lives, they could talk about what's going on with their sons and others, and so that they can get the love and support that they need. So I'm really looking forward to working with them on that, and hopefully we'll get that up and rolling real soon. I think it's going to be great. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. But Angel, you guys will be here in just a few minutes. I want to shout out Derek Evans is in the house now too. And you guys, Scott and Thomas, there are so many great, Rick Percoco down there. Rick has been instrumental behind the scenes helping the J6ers that are incarcerated. There's some really, really great people in here right now. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them. Joe, if you don't know who they are, you guys need to follow them. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. And guys, this is
of course, Coco, Joe. Can't forget Coco.
well, we can't forget Coco, without a doubt. Folks, this night court with Joe Lnu, we've got a format. We're going to get to questions, audience questions. I know we've got some. If you want a mic, request it. My co-host will get you up, and if you put your hand up, we're going to go questions. But please try to keep your questions somewhere around 40 seconds. And I know we all have, including myself, we all have a tendency to kind of riff a little bit, but I've got to shut this down in 28 minutes. And I want to get as many questions in as possible and give our guests an opportunity to answer any of the questions that you might have from with the stories you've heard tonight. So
Joe,
I'm going to go to.
I'm going to drop down. Okay. That way somebody has a speaker.
Thank you,
Okay.
Shelley. I appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
Joe, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump in front of the line here, so to speak, and take any questions that anybody might have directed my way. As I'm in a hotel room here in Georgia, and I just put in 14 hours today.
I got you.
I'm barely hanging on here.
And
so,
Scott, I got you. And
if you could,
I don't think anybody would have any begrudgment to you if you wanted to bail out and go get you some sleep, because I know you're working 3 jobs. So don't feel obligated to stay and go through these questions. We can do that without you. I don't want to keep you up. So it's up to you, brother.
It's Joe. It's my duty. It's my duty to share the truth. That's why I'm willing to answer a couple questions. And
okay. Well, let's get to them.
And be as transparent as I've always been.
I appreciate you, brother. Let's go ahead and Moni, go ahead.
I'll make it quick. Guys, I was in D.C. that day. I didn't go to the Capitol. I had my father. We went to eat after the speech. But I know I could be in the same position you guys ended up in. And that's one of the reasons I advocate as much as I do. And I want to point out that I put a video of Mike Pence on January the 4th saying we would have our grievances heard about all those election irregularities. And we all saw them. And I just want to tell you that there's a lot of folks out there just like me that understand what a beautiful day it was, and that crowd was not intending to do anything except for have our grievances heard. So you've got my support, and I'm sorry what you've been through. And Shelley and I'll give you a platform anytime during the day that you feel you want to have something to say. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Rise Above.
I want to tell you I appreciate that, and that means the most to us. We are grateful for folks like you, And thank you for your continued support and continue continue to toe the line, so to speak.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Moni. Thanks, Scott. Let's go to FT French. He's one of our contributors, and his hand's been up early. He actually could have a very interesting question. You never know what this guy's going to say.
Can y'all hear me?
We got you loud and clear, FT.
Perfect. I do actually have a very interesting question. So I'll try to keep this as brief as I possibly can. I'm definitely what you would consider far left. And, you know, I was at some BLM protests that turned riots in Boston. And when I'm listening to these stories, you know, it really strikes me, like, you know, Mama Mel's point, that if they're doing this to January 6ers, they can do it to everyone. And I believe that this is the case because my protest was also peaceful. We went to the Capitol, Boston Capitol. We're in the Commons, and when the protest ended, if anybody knows about the Commons, they have Park Street, the T there, and that's like the fastest way to leave. They shut that down, and the Commons is like a grid, like a square, and they boxed us in and started tear gassing us. And I'm hearing the same type of tactics that I heard that police were using there. I witnessed when I tried to leave and double back, they blocked the exit in which we've came, and then I left on the only place that wasn't covered yet, and I actually saw some protesters got run over by cop cars as they were trying to put up a barricade. So my question is, considering all these things, I think there might be some similarities between how law enforcement acts in terms of protests in general. And I think it may be a tactic to undermine our First Amendment right to protest. By having plainclothes cops and actors and using crowd dynamics to basically push and incite riots. What do y'all think about that in terms of a bipartisan issue? Like, do you think that we are having a major issue with police undermining our First Amendment right to protest by agitating crowds and causing riots?
Well, first off, I want to say that the difference of opinion is what makes this the greatest country on the planet. So while we might not align on our beliefs, I appreciate you. And I appreciate your opinion and your thoughts and your input. And I do agree. I do agree that the machine is alive and well. And I believe that while the tactics might be the same, the repercussions are certainly not. I believe that the two-tiered justice system that is alive and well, unfortunately, right now is weaponized by our government against the MAGA movement, the so-called domestic terrorists that we've been labeled as. But I stand with you on your right to assemble, to peacefully protest, and to have your voice heard. Our First Amendment right is something that is a God-given right, and you know, I just I believe when you silence that, or when you try to silence those that you don't agree with, you fall into the same category as, you know, those you label as a dictator. So I appreciate your input, man, and I stand with you. I stand with you. I might not stand with some of the views you might have while I do not know them. I stand with you in your right to have your voice heard, brother.
All right, guys, just a little public service announcement. We've got 4 hands up, sorry, right now. I've got 2 requests, and the speakers are full. if you do have a request or a question to ask, if you could raise your hand, and if you don't have a question to ask, I'm going to drop you down so we can make room for some people who might. So raise your hand now if you have a question to ask, and we're going to try to move through a little quicker.
Let's go to Rise Above.
Hi, everybody. I want to say that I appreciate having the opportunity to listen to the stories and also to feel like I can draw some energy off of some of you because of so much negativity that is going on in our country. Bootlegger is in California. He was supposed to be in Oregon, and they changed it. He sat at the Portland airport for X amount of hours or whatever time frame to watch 6 other people go on over to the place in Oregon where he was supposed to be, and they promptly sent him down to California. It's been 4 days since I've heard from him, and I would anticipate that he is in 23-hour lockdown because we were discussing some situations that they probably didn't like us typing, even though they approved the message to be sent through to each one of us. It's a game of Russian roulette, as far as I'm concerned, regarding your rights right now. If we don't continue to speak about it and continue to stand up for the truth and the right, then our children will not have a chance in this country. I want to say that when I draw the energy off of this group, I can also say that I'm contributing my energy in some way or another, because I don't forget day and night about the times and people that have crossed my path because of this situation, who I would have never otherwise known. And I have a question, and I don't think there's probably an answer to it, but on the day that this happened, I was watching a televised video that same day. And my friend, who is a Vietnam vet, him and I were both sitting there watching this. And we noticed a hooded character that walked up out of the side of the hallway there that come up from probably one of the tunnels. And both of us looked at each other and said, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, that's not any topic that I have an answer to yet, but I have heard that he was there and was going to testify into the situation with who was involved in child trafficking, which would, if you think about it, would have been the one thing that Mike Pence would have wanted to back off of real fast. That's speculation on my part, but I want to throw it out there for future, because if you see some video that you think might be him, it probably is him. And I just want to say that I appreciate so much the opportunity to belong to a group of moms that are involved in this. And I will continue to pray for all of them, and I will continue to do whatever's in my power to change things. I want to really encourage the J6ers that are hearing this message that you are a part of a history book for our future children. Our history, civil history, has been robbed. We do not have education in here that's accurate in the United States for quite some time. You are a part of a history book that your children are going to learn the truth about. And I want to encourage everybody to stand up for the truth of what is right. And the truth will win, because Jesus Christ made sure that it did. Thank you so much. I love you all.
All right, thank you, Rise Above. I just wanted to say, people have questions because the speakers are our guests are trying to get to bed. So anyone who has a question, let you speak first, and then people who just want to talk. And we really appreciate your comments, but we're trying to let these guys go. So anyone who has a question for the guests, go ahead. I think Spunky was next, and then Grizzly, I believe. And I do want to get to you, Jason.
Well, first, I want to thank you guys for the space, Joe and Wayne and Ron. I've never been to one of your spaces, so what a great experience. I have to give a shout out because it is not often that I come into spaces and I don't hear an echo chamber. And so the fact that I see that you've got, and I'm just going to say F the French, on your team, and that you've given him an opportunity to speak, and that not only did he speak, but that graciously people were open to his opinions. I think that that is ultimately what these spaces are all about. We cannot allow ourselves to be echo chambers. We cannot allow ourselves to have tunnel vision. We must be open to hearing the opinions of others. We do not have to accept them, but we can agree to disagree. And so I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm all about no safe spaces, right? We have to take accountability and be able to have those tough conversations. I would be remiss not to mention Moni and Shelly. Those are my girls. They are fighting the good fight each and every single day. And I know if Shelly's heard it once, she's heard it 500 times. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep doing this? Because you know what? We have to keep doing this. And so my question is this to anyone that's in the audience, and if you don't have a mic, you can DM me later. I want to know if anyone is keeping a list or photographs or anything that there's a collective so that we can put, if they want us to, pictures with names. I'm excellent at making graphics, and what I'd like to do is make some graphics with the pictures and the first names and get these out, because we have these spaces and we have lots of information. But you know what? When you put a name to a picture and you force people to look at those pictures, because we've definitely got some boots on the ground and some wonderful digital warriors in here. When you make people look at those faces and they put the names with those faces, you drive awareness over and over and over again. So if anyone has that information, I'm sure it's an ongoing list, because unfortunately they keep going and getting these patriots, but someone DM me, because I'm, like I said, I can make some graphics, I can put some names to it. And if it's something you can DM me about later, let's do that, because I know for the sake of the space. But that was the one question. And I just want to, these spaces are so important. So thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to have a mic. God bless our patriots. God bless Thomas and Scott, all the mothers, all the families. You know, they are unjustly persecuted against over and over. This has been going on far too long, and God help President Trump get back in office so he can pardon every single one of them. Thank you again. Y'all share this space, and just God bless our J6ers.
All right, thank you, Spunky. And again, this is a Q&A. A little bit of housekeeping. I noticed that Thomas got dropped down to listener. If we could bring Thomas back up so he can answer some questions.
I've thrown him a mic. We'll see if we can get him back up. And Spunky,
Okay.
thank you for coming by the space. I'm honored and quite humbled by your description of our space. But that's exactly what we're trying to do. Each one of these night courts by Joe Lnu, we're looking for opposing voices. We don't want to be an echo chamber. We want to try to figure out and get our minds right, and or at least know what I'm against. Not that it's a J. If I'm against J6ers, I'm against J6ers. Well, that's not accurate. I mean, look how varied they are, and individual they are. I have to go meet them before I can say I'm against them. Where we at? We're at Grizzly, guys. We got time for one more question, and then we're gonna have to close this out.
Joe, we do need to bring Thomas up. I think he's our last guest still in the space. There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, we've got him up. Go ahead, Grizz.
Thanks, Joe. Just a couple quick words. I'd like to commend all the audience. Really, I've heard a lot of really compelling comments, I guess, by the guests here, and to the guests that are being, that were J6 participants, I'll say, and being persecuted by the government. I just want you guys to know that you might have been the tip of the spear, and so you're getting the brunt of all this, but this fight's not over. We're behind you. So my question is really, I think James mentioned that that they didn't have cell service, that they were jamming the cell signals. And I recall during the J6 select committee, whatever, blah, 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 they were talking about the Oath Keepers were communicating on their phones with their leader who was wherever. I don't even know all that story. I don't really care. But my question is that like a riot control kind of thing, or is that something that would be done to incite like confusion and panic in the crowd? Or is that a regular thing they do? Like, certainly it's not a normal thing to have cell phone signals jammed at the Capitol. So,
Grizz, let me touch in on that.
I'm sorry.
Let me touch on that. We don't know if it was jammed. We know the cell phone service didn't work unless somebody has some documents to show that it was jammed. You can have what's called too many cell phones, and it just overloads a cell phone tower. There's a big. It costs a lot of money to put cell phone towers like in football stadiums when people go or they have laggy service or no service at all because so many phones are registering to one short tower. So. And I'm going to let Thomas answer. Thomas may know, but I wouldn't be surprised if he just didn't overload. There was a lot more people there than what I think has been reported.
Yeah,
Thomas, do you want to touch on that?
How do they have
My experience was that my phone was unable to communicate. Like my wife and I were able to communicate at the very beginning, but then at some point my phone, I couldn't send, receive, make any phone calls. It was just it was just stuck in like a limbo. So that was my experience there. I don't know what that's a result of. I mean, I have my own ideas, but until some facts come out, I'm just going to wait to see what the actual reports have to say, if there are any.
No, and I'm not implying that I know, nor am I implying that the government didn't utilize some sort of a tactic to shut down cell phone service, whether that be turning the towers off, using an actual jamming signal, or they were overloaded. So I'm just throwing that out there as that is a possibility that it could have been just so many people, so many phones in a small area. Guys, we're down to the end of the show. It's been a great show. I want to thank Thomas, and I'm not done thanking you, but I want to thank Thomas and Shelly and Moni, Spunky, the J6 family that's in here, Mama Mel. It's an honor that you guys come to the space and listen to our story tonight. Bruce and Ron, y'all want to give your closing statements and let me give my final monologue so we can get out here on the hour?
I'll keep it short and sweet. I thought this was a great space. Thomas, thank you so much for giving us your time, sharing your story. I think it's really important that a lot of people hear it. And yeah, thank you for doing it so well and taking the time to answer these questions. And I'll pass it off to Ron.
That's big, sexy Ron to you.
Evening, guys. Hey, thanks for showing up, guys. I really appreciate you sharing your stories with us. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. There's a lot of stuff that you guys brought up and talked to us about that I never knew that happened. I thought I followed it pretty close, but you guys definitely opened my eyes up to some stuff. I appreciate everybody else showing up tonight. First Space, I think we did really good. Our goal is to keep these things as even keeled as possible, get good perspectives from both sides of the coin without jumping down each other's throat. And I think we achieved that tonight. So I appreciate you guys coming. Make sure you come to our next one.
Thanks, guys. FT French, do you have a final word?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, looking and hearing and listening and truly listening, I see so many parallels. And I already knew there was a big danger from the left about going after the J6ers, specifically because once you use the government to point a gun at somebody else, they are going to turn that right back on you. And, I see this with the Cop City protests, people getting charged with terrorism for that. And what I take from this is, a story that I can tell to my fellow people on the left and say, hey, you know what, we have to look critically when we support the government violating rights. We have to think critically and realize that we're all in this together, and that when we hurt one person, it hurts everybody else. I go back to MLK's speech, when he said, "Injustice everywhere is a threat. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I think this is extremely paramount in this case. And I'll rest my plane there.
And Joe, I don't know how long your closing monologue is. If we could get Busybody and Bob in just a minute each.
You know what? I don't know that we're going to be able to get there, but in my closing, I'll let you guys know we typically do a Joe Lnu after party. We can take this discussion over there and we can continue it for as long as anyone likes. and if Thomas would like to join us, then he can answer some questions. Otherwise, we'll just act like we're smart and act like we know what the answer is. But Thomas actually may know the answer. But folks, this has been a great show. It's exactly in the vein that I wanted to create, which is a space that we can talk honestly and look at each other as individuals. I wanted to bite my tongue every time I refer to our guest and the J6 families, and I have to do it again. I'm using a moniker that puts them into this big bucket of people, and their government comes after you, whether it's right or wrong. But when you face the justice system, you go to a courthouse that's paid for by the government. You walk on a floor that's paid for by the government. You go through security who gets a paycheck from the government. You walk into the courtroom, you sit in the chair, and the chair's paid for by the government. The table you put your elbows on it paid for by the government. The water you drink is paid for by the government. That's okay. The prosecutor's paid for it by the government. The judge is paid for by the government, and the jury gets a stipend. The only people in there for you as individuals to get your due process is you and your attorney, and it's a fight. And win or lose, if these gentlemen had gone through their court cases and had been exonerated, I won't even say exonerated, found not guilty and had no judicial punishment. In other words, they didn't go to prison for 30 months. They're not on 5 years probation. It still would have sunk most people financially. And that is an issue, I think, that is no matter if you're left or right, just as F.T. French says, we need to start paying attention to what's going on, because if they can do it to one group, air quotes, they can do it to another group, in air quotes. How many people does this happen to in the United States every day that there wasn't mass media coverage of the event? How many people does the same kind of thing happen to that we don't hear their names? Their lives and their stories are no less important than Thomas Hamner's, James Mault, and Scott Fairlamb. They're not any different. And I say that I want to keep doing these spaces. I want the participation from you folks, and I want to hear the stories and see if we can't get a consensus. I don't care if you vote blue. I don't care if you vote red. I'll give you my personal opinion is that I believe that I've got to pry the blue hand off my neck so the red one can put its hand on my neck. I don't see that there's a lot of difference these days. But I do have hope. I have hope for the Republican Party. I think that Donald Trump is, once again, your host's personal opinion. I think that we need somebody to turn some tables over. And Donald Trump, it seems to me like he might know how to use a hammer. But we need to break some things up there. It's more than just January 6th. Pay attention. There was numbers released, I think, 2 weeks ago, over 200,000 FISA warrants. So over 200,000 FISA warrants were improperly put together. Well, these folks, if you don't know, these are secret warrants. If I get a search warrant for your house and break your door down, you're not home, you're going to know I've been there because your door is broken. I'm going to leave you a piece of paper and everything, a list of everything I took in the house for you to come back and see. If the government has a FISA warrant on it, you don't know. We could all have FISA warrants on us right now. You won't know until enforcement action. You won't know until they kick your door in and take you to jail for things you've been saying on the telephone. And if we have 200,000 of those, that's 200,000 Americans whose lives have been impacted by a FISA warrant, and it could be even judicial punishment behind it. We don't know. We'd have to ask the government to find out. So I want the discussion, and I want to go back and I want to finish this up with Thomas, and I'll pass it along as well. But when you talk to Scott and you talk to James, you let them know that my heartfelt gratitude for you guys coming on here and telling us a story that you're going to remember for the rest of your lives. It wasn't what mainstream media put out with frothing mouths. We're reaching for the levers of power. It was true Americans, and each one of you said that. Each one of you explained in quite detail what you were there for. You were there for patriots. You were there to be Americans. You're there because you love this country. So I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank Veteran. I didn't get to you, brother. I appreciate it. Bob Blah and Busybody. We'll host a space directly after this. If you guys will send me a direct message, I'll get you into that invite so you can come directly to it, and we'll do an after party, and we can continue this discussion. But once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. We're excited about this. We've got a guest lined out for the rest of this week. We'll be doing nightly shows the same time frame. Give us a follow, and we'll keep you up to date. If you can make it, we'd love to have you. Thanks, everyone.
Kevin.